I think it's been a pleasure to talk to you, even though it's online. I've not been giving certain kind of training for quite some times, but then thank you for the opportunity given. So today I'll be sharing with you. I think this is a lot of a sharing session. Um, some of the thing is actually about refreshing back, trying to recap back some of the information that has been shared before in the active learning workshop. But now today we are going, the objective of today is actually to see how does the active learning that we usually conduct face to face, we can actually transfer that or translate that into online learning. Okay, so without further ado, let's have a look on the slide that I have shared with you. Okay, right. So today, there are several outlines, several things that has been outlined here. We're going to talk about the definition, and then we're going to look at the guiding principles. We're going to look at the examples implementations, which is particularly we want to look at the books and models to refresh it up. And then we're going to have a look at the online assessment tools. Um, we will talk a little bit on alternative assessment, some brief ideas, and then some final tip and Q&A session. Okay. Right. So if you could recall, actually, when we talk about active learning, right? This is part of the student-centered approach, okay? Where actually active learning lies in the, active learning lies in the, it is, if let's say we talk about traditional approach, is chalk and talk. For example, right? Um, when everyone, I mean, like the lecturer just give the lecture throughout the session, but the participants keep quiet, not doing anything. Reza, you're not muting? Okay. So when we talk about the active learning itself, all right. So we always associate it with lecture, but it is actually um, it is switch between uh, some kind of activities in between that. Okay, so those are the things that we call as active learning, right? So active learning does not simply like everybody is doing activities, but it is actually a combination between some kind of lectures. There are still lectures taking place, and then there are some activities in between that. Okay, so how do we translate that into online learning? Okay, because if let's say we just give, for example, for the next 2 hours I'm just doing the talking all by myself without any kind of activities, I think that's going to be boring. Okay, so we need to think out actually how does the online learning could be big, more pleasant, more enjoyable, and a more fun session in that sense. Okay, so we're going to look into that later. But before that, I would like to bring you to the Mentimeter that I'm going to share with you. um, can you please actually take out your mobile, or you can use other browser, and then we want to see actually recalling back on your experience. If let's say you have teach before in your previous class online, for example, like me, I have to stop in week 11 and I have to conduct everything online. And then what work in your class but not in online class? Can you please respond to this first? Can you see the Mentimeter um, Mentimeter slides, and then can you please respond to this? Reza, by the way, why the chat is not available? Is it meant for team members only? So I cannot see whether people are actually listening or not. I do not know.
You are quite clear, Doc. We can hear you.
Okay, can you actually see the Mentimeter?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Tazli. What can you explain the question again?
I mean, if we look at the Microsoft Team ni, because we did not join the team, so we cannot chat. So the function of chat is limited here. So I do not know whether actually they are listening to me or not, but Dr. Hasnah just responded to me. So the
Yes,
next,
here.
all right, thank you. So before we actually proceed, I just want to ask you, can you go to this menti.com and use this code? Can you recall on your experience, what did you do work in class but not in online class? What can you do in face-to-face class but you cannot do in online class? So we have here somebody mentioning that you cannot do experiment. Okay, yes, of course. Online class you cannot do experiments. And then interaction between student cannot be done much. It could be done, but with limited certain kind of numbers of students. If let's say we have too many, then it's quite difficult.
Yes, because one person have to talk at one time, so it's very difficult actually.
Yeah. And then we could have a group discussion. It could be done in a small group lah. I mean, it's not as a big group. Think passion. This is interesting. We need to think about alternative how we could do that with some kind of online tools. I'm going to share with you later on. Checking students around in class but cannot do online, of course, because the students are actually at different space, different time, different area. Um, Cooperative learning is limited and not that engaged. Visual interaction, students turn off video, etc. Okay, so these are some of the challenges that actually we face. Of course, there are certain things that we cannot do much. For example, but writing on board actually we could do, except that when I tried to use, for example, in Microsoft Team as well, there is actually function of let me check. No, it's not available in this channel, but supposedly I'm trying to use whiteboard here, but it doesn't appear. So actually, you can actually use whiteboard in Microsoft Team. Okay. If let's say you have your own channel that you created or groups that you have with your students, or otherwise there are actually other apps that you can use whiteboard as well. So okay, let's have a look at the slide again. So toggling between slide is also challenging. Right. So we're going to have a look at, before we proceed with the tools, what are the tools that we can use? I would like to make some recap on actually the guiding principles. Whenever that we do things, even though it is face to face or if it online, there are certain guiding principles that we want to adhere. Okay. The first thing first is about constructive alignment. I think many of us have been told this again and again about what is actually constructive alignment, but some people may still have some kind of confusion or may just have a surface understanding about what is constructive alignment is all about. Okay. um so constructive alignment, first of all, it starts with the intended outcomes. We as a lecturer, we have our own intended outcomes, what we want to achieve, what we want to be able to achieve, what we want the students to be able to do. Okay, so we have certain kind of intention, And normally we translate this intention into what we call as course learning outcomes. So that's why we spell out the course learning outcome too based on the Bloom taxonomy. I think many of us know that. So this is where actually how does the course outcome so is being spelled out. It supposedly come from our intention, what the students supposed to be able to do by learning our course. What are the things they need to do? For example, to perform something. To perform, for example, in my course is actually to be able to perform material and energy balances. Okay, so when we talk about to perform on something, we have to make sure that the activities that the students need to be doing is about performing something. Okay, so that is actually the students' activity. And then when we want to measure the students' ability to, we want to measure some whether the students are able to perform or not. So that is part of our assessments that we should give to our students. So we have to make sure that the students' activity as well as the assessment that we give is actually aligned to each other. This is why what we call as constructive alignment. Okay. For example, like when we set the assessments, this assessment will drive learning. Some of the misaligned of the in the misaligned things, for example, like we ask the students to we our intention is actually we want to students to be able to create something, but in the assessment task we give something so the student to memorize something. So there is a misalignment there. So there is no constructive alignment in this particular place. Okay. So we want to make sure that whenever that we spell in our course outcome, those need to be able to be measured, and then and it must be aligned together. So these are the things that we have to bear in mind. Okay. The second guiding principles that I think all of us need to remember as well, that I think we've been talking about how people learn framework. Okay. In order to make sure that our class or our online class is very effective, there are again four lenses of learning that we must make sure that we adhere to this. The first of all, we talk about knowledge centered. Okay. So again, when we do online learning, we must also make sure that the knowledge that we want to impart to our students organized around fundamentals of a disciplines, and it is built up from the previous knowledge that the students have. That is the knowledge-centered lens. When we talk about the learner-centered, the challenge for us is that because we're going to start the activities, and then we're going to start a new semester later, we still need to make sure that what is our learner's background. Here I would say that we need to think about the learners, for example, like the where are their location right now, because instead of this is an online learning during this time, I call it as emergency remote learning, because the students are not staying together. We do not know what will be their internet speed. So these are the things, the information that we need to collect, whether they could afford to have the data in order for them to have some kind of assessment from us. So these are the things we also need to consider. And we organize the learning activities based on this information. Okay. So these are the extra information that we need to dig out from our students. The next part is assessment. So again, in assessments, we cannot simply just have summative assessment, which is only towards the end we give some projects or give some exams, some tests for us to grade. Regularly we need to interact as well within the online session, okay, by using formative assessment work. So this is one of the criteria that we need to include, need to impart in our online session. And the finally is about community centered. I think also this is another challenge for us, because the learners who actually come to our class need to feel sense of belonging to each other. So how do we create our online learning experience to have a community centered experience? Okay, students that feel belonging to each other. So these are the things that we must adhere to make sure that our online learning class works well, because how people learn is has been studying more than thousands of learning how people learn based on the reflection from others and based on the reflection of educators. And it shows that all these four elements, four lenses ni must be fulfilled in order for us to make sure that the learning happen. Right. Another important part when we actually include in our online learning is about scaffolding. Okay, scaffolding is equivalently important. We must make sure that the students have the right scaffolding. We provide some kind of help, temporary help. Later we move on, and we call this as actually assisted level. And if let's say we do not actually improve, try to help the students, try not to scaffold the students, they will just maintain on their own individual level. There is no heightened ups of the new improvement level. So from time to time, we need to think about what kind of scaffolding that I need to provide to support my students online. So these are also equivalently important. For example, like, one of the challenge that we face during this pandemic is the dying motivation of the students. Okay. Um, some of the students may think that I am at the disadvantage because I have not good, I haven't got in a good internet speed, for example, or maybe for example, I'm doing something that is it still worthy for me to do because of this, because of the economic crisis and so on. They could be overthinking as well. Sometimes their mental health is also affecting. So these are the things that we need to consider when actually we wanted to make sure that the students learn. And we need to constantly motivate our students. As such, actually during this particular time, especially during this pandemic time, I would say that if let's say we wanted to conduct some kind of online learning session, although that our rooms can occupy up to 200 students, for example, we may want to reassess back whether we want to allow at one time 200 student access, instead of maybe we need to modify a little bit. Okay, maybe we could do a combination of asynchronous and synchronous. Asynchronous, which means that we do it something where the students access on their own, for example, like we pre-recorded our video, and then we have some kind of short session that with 30 or 40 students at a time, so they could have some kind of intimate time with us. I think that is very important as well for us to think as part of the scaffolding. Okay, so these are some of the guiding principles that we need to think of when actually we design our online learning activities. Because the most important part is that we need to know that some of our students, they may just need 3 steps to achieve their intended learning outcomes. Some of the students may need up to 10 to 15 steps in order for them to achieve the intended learning outcome. So we need to identify this with, and then we cannot just wait until they do their test or their standard assignments towards the end. Only then we know that some of the students are crying for help. So at least the engagement that we do during online session, this is where actually we can get some kind of feedback or information whether these students are actually really learning or not. Okay. So when we look at the example of the implementation, there are certain guidelines that we need to follow. The first of all is we talk about defining the outcome. So we already have list down our course outcome, but what will be the outcome of the day itself? So we need to understand what are the things that we want to achieve on that particular day as part of the learning outcome. So when we have defined that particular outcome, this is where actually we create the activities that will bring up the active verb in the outcome. As I mentioned just now, for example, like if let's say my course outcome is about to be able to perform energy balance. Okay, so that is actually my learning outcome. So what kind of activities that I need to do? So I need to think about something that the students should be able to do to perform. It's not me to perform. It's supposed to be the students to be able to perform. So how do I make sure that the activities that I design must make sure that the students perform those kind of thing? So this is where actually we need to figure out, okay, what kind of online tools that I should be able to use, okay, so that the students be able to perform something. For example, like you can use the whiteboard. So you give some kind of questions, okay, and then some of the students they need to show in on the whiteboard that they'll be able to perform that. That is one kind of example. But what are other things that we could do in order for us to make sure that the students be able to perform it? So once we decide what are activities that we want to use, this is where actually we decide on the guidance that we needed to have or what kind of scaffolding that is required. For example, like if let's say some of the students may face difficulties on it, then we need to think about maybe the students need some kind of tutoring system. Maybe some of our good students be able to have a smaller units within Microsoft Teams as well, just so that they could tutor their friends. That is one of the scaffolding. And then we need to try it out as well as make some revisions. So this is actually some guideline for us to decide what are the activities or things that we could do during the live session. So if you could recall back, this is the thing that we have been sharing with you during our workshop on active learning. So this is what we call as books and division model. Okay. So similarly, this works actually for our online session. All right. Because for example, like if let's say you could recall that there is an advanced organizing. So once I start the lecture, before I give something new, actually we're trying to look at what are the things that the participants or the learners had known before, and we try to build up our knowledge on top of that. Okay, and then we can start to give, let's say for example right now I'm giving you 10 to 15 minutes lecture, just some recap on the guiding principles, talk about how people learn, talk about um, constructive alignment and scaffolding. And then the next thing is where actually we try to switch in with some kind of activities. So what are the activities that we could think that we could use online? Okay, so and then we this is what we call as intermediate activities. Okay, and then towards the end we close back by some kind of summary or closure. Okay, so there are also activities on the closure. So if you could recall back, if you have the workbook with you, there are 20 techniques that actually, but not limited to this, right? There are 20 techniques that has been shared in that workbook, but you can have many more than this. But if you could recall these kind of activities, okay, so these are the things that we could usually use in our class. Okay, for example, like we always use like think, pair, and share. So how do we do this? Okay, thinking of these activities, how do we actually do this in our active learning? How do we conduct active learning online? Can you please recall? Can you please use actually menti.com, Mentimeters? All right. And let's see how actually we could try to figure out how best one of these techniques could be used inside the class, inside of our online class. Can you please respond to this? Okay, used to like Mentimeter. We could have quiz. Use a common chat room. Okay, which is not available now in Microsoft Teams. I think that is our feedback to Sita lah. I mean, Reza should make sure that the chat box. The missing part right now during our session is there is we are not able to chat. So I think that is the one of the things that we could improve in the future. Doing poll, okay. Ask for opinions through chats, quiz, use tools that allow a collaboration between the students such as Koggle, OneNote. Excellent. Okay. Use 1 minute paper. What are the tools that we can use in order for us to use 1 minute paper? What do you think? Okay, we could have Kahoots. Anything else? Okay, we could have Padlet, right? Chat, Mentimeter, Padlet, Kahoot. I think you're very well versed in this. Very good. What are other things that you could do? Try to recall back. For example, like if let's say we want to do brainstorming as part of the advanced organizing, how do we do that? What is best way for us to do that? Think about if let's say you want to use a pet test as one of the activities. Okay, so what would be the best tool that we could use in order for us to use pet test? Okay. Okay, only 11 people responding. Anybody else? I think we have about 40 something.
Dr.
40.
Tazli,
Yes.
I think actually we can chat while in this room, because you can go to the left hand side at the top. There's activity, and then at the activity there you can actually chat there. Like you can just type and it comes. There's
Because
activity on the left hand side top. There's an icon, activity. So
I click on
everybody can
that,
chat
but
there
it
too.
doesn't appear actually.
Doesn't appear.
Ah, for example, like when what I have right now, when I want to go to chat, the chat column kat sini, chat in channel meeting is only available to team members. So, for example, when we do not join as a team members,
Okay.
so we cannot chat.
Okay.
Ah,
That's different. Okay.
so maybe I don't know whether you need to change the setting so that we could chat or not. Those are the things lah. Because other meetings that I have joined before, we don't have to join the group. I think we can chat, but in this session that we cannot chat.
Okay.
Okay. Right. So let's go to the PowerPoint. Okay, thank you for sharing some kind of activities that we could do. So we again, for example, like we have all these techniques. What we need to remember is that whenever that we conduct certain kind of activities, certain kind of lectures, then we try to slot in some activities in between. This is also just to trigger maybe some of our students are actually passive members who just actually doing something else but just listening to what we're trying to say. So from here just now, I can see only 13 members participate in the Mentimeter. Okay. All right. So when we actually there are some kind of examples that we could use. For example, like brainstorming by using Padlet. Okay. Padlet, you can use brainstorming session. We can also use brainstorming by using Mentimeter, because Mentimeter have different types that you can just pick and then students can respond there. If let's say you want to conduct pair testing, we can use certain kind of tools such as Socrative or Kahoot or Quizlet. Okay. I think the most important part is actually we being creative enough to allow the students to do some kind of activities where they have to think on their own first, and then maybe they could connect with some kind of some friends or peers, and then they could respond together in the platform that we provide for them or the apps that we provide for them. One of the things that I always use is reflection using Padlet. Um, and maybe you could have some kind of activity such as read and explain using Microsoft Teams. For example, like you can share the material in advance. You can share the materials with them, the files with them. Give them time, maybe 3 to 5 minutes or 3 minutes to read certain kind of text, and ask them to discuss first among themselves. For example, like what do they understand, and then ask someone randomly to explain to you actually what does the text means. One of the thing that I always use as well, for example, I use in e-learning forum. For example, like I force the students to read. So I give few pages of textbooks excerpts. I ask them to read and I ask them to re-summarize back on the online forum. Maybe I sometimes I ask them individually. Sometimes I ask them to do as part of pair work. So they need to discuss first to come up with a consensus text. What have actually they agreed on the summary. So as what I'm trying to tell you here is that in active learning session, during online session, or we call it remote for this kind of remote teaching, it doesn't have to be active learning that we always sees it is within 1 hour context. Sometimes active learning could be done out of those 1 hour context. For example, certain kind of tasks that we give to them that they need to respond within that day. For example, like I give 15 minutes lecture and then I give certain kind of task and then I said, I want you to come up with some kind of pair work to be submit through the ULearn, for example. So those are still considered as part of active learning because we still allow them to actually having time to connect with their peers so that they're trying to solve some kind of problems. So it doesn't have to be all the time that we think that, okay, I must make sure that only I do online activities and then everything must be active during that time. Okay, so these are the things that we need to consider. Okay. Um, so we looked on the some kind of assessment tools that we have. Okay, so we have formative assessment, online assessment tools. I would like you to answer again these questions in Mentimeter. Okay. I think okay. Why formative assessment is important on your own thinking? Can you just recall back actually about formative assessment? I just wanted to know whether we still have the same understanding about what is formative assessment. Prof. Shah, you want to say something?
No, nothing.
I can hear you breathing. Okay. So why formative assessment is important? So we need to gauge the students' understanding. We need to check students' understanding. If wrong, then we can correct on the spot. And then we need to know what the students understand so far. Is to understand the progress of the students at certain point, so that we meet the outcome. Okay, we check on the current level of understanding to check the understanding during the process of learning. I think the formative assessment is not to get the final grade. That is usually summative assessment when we actually doing the grading. To monitor the students' progress, that's correct. Okay. To provide feedback to the students from time to time. Okay. To check the students' understanding. Allow lecture to adjust the speed. That's true. That's true. Check their understanding and provide them the feedback. Okay. So what is it? Okay, so we understand that actually formative assessment is very important even when actually we conduct our online session. Okay, and then this is where actually we're trying to be interactive with the students. Okay, so that the students actually can respond. We can use certain kind of tools in order for us to gauge understanding with our students. Okay, enforce specific content as part of scaffolding activities. That's good. All right. So the next question is, can you name some of the online tools suitable for formative assessment other than what you have shown me, tell me before? Can you think about some other things that you can think of online tools, or things that you feel that we should have this so that we can have formative assessment with the students? Okay. You have Kahoot, Socrative, online poll, right? WhatsApp, Facebook, polls everywhere. Touchpad screen. Interesting. So creative. Padlet, quiz in ULearn, Microsoft Form, okay. Unlimited access Padlet. Clickers, right? Wolfram Mathematica. Oh, I can see there's a lot of tools. Project Nearport. I think this case is quite interesting, but sadly, I did not because we not be able to get the check available. May I know what is actually who wrote Nearport? Can you respond to me? What is actually Nearport? I haven't come across this before. Anybody? So we have at puzzle, form, Slido. What else? Zero. I haven't heard about this Zero before. Edulastic is also something new for me. Plickers. I've heard about Plickers, but I haven't used Plickers. But I think Plickers generally we use that in class. Maybe we can use in, I don't know, but I haven't tried in online because Plickers need to have the students hold some placard to answer the questions. Okay, we could have Telegram. I think many of us know about Socrative. That's good. Yes, Mentimeter is also, I like to actually use Mentimeter a lot. I have created a lot of slides using Mentimeter. I think it's quite easy for me to adjust. Okay, so we have so many responded here. So response here is that we actually look at, like for example, Socrative, Kahoot, and so on. All right. I'm not here to share actually with you how actually we could create it. I think because you can Google. I think even in YouTube you can learn a lot actually how to create on its own. For example, like if let's say you want to create quiz on Socrative, you want to create Mentimeter slides. So these are the things that you can get the tips from YouTube or from Google itself. But you can see that there are actually plenty of platforms or apps that we could use actually to engage with our students. So maybe I would like to hear you. The next slide is actually how actually this particular tool can be used in order for us to assess the student, especially some of the things that I haven't heard. Maybe you could share as well. So can you please share in the next slide? Using one example of tool, what is the best way to use it? Especially those who use Edulastic, all those kind of things. Maybe you can share here so that everybody can learn as well. Can you respond now? Just think about one example. Just one example. For example, like if let's say you want to use Padlet. So what is the best way to use Padlet? Or if let's say you shared just now about Zero or Edulastic. So how do you use that? Or maybe you said about Plickers. How do you use Plickers? What is the best way to use it? Can you share here? Okay, I use online videos to gauge students' interest. Mentimeter through the word cloud, okay, as what we used just now. Okay, so that Mentimeter word cloud, we can use the keywords. So these are the keywords. I think I always use word cloud ni when actually I wanted to see how does the student see, for example, like if let's say the word cloud, the keyword is big, so which means that many of the students responded to that. But at the same time, I also love to see some of the small keywords that doesn't appear, which means that only one or two students who use that particular keywords. And I always try to ask the students back, what do you understand with this particular keyword? So that maybe because only these few students understand it, but majority of the students may miss it. Okay. Oh, project is a tool that allows to create multimedia presentations for online quizzes. That is interesting. Nearpod, everyone can see slide on his own mobile. Tap on mobile, we can create activity in Nearpod and students can participate. That's interesting. WhatsApp can share pictures and images. Of course, it is. Like everybody else like to use WhatsApp right now. What are the things? What are the things that you think we can use for online learning? Google Form, ask them to respond or brainstorm and combine with attendance. Okay. Padlet, get students to do their draft writing. For example, summarizing short paragraph. Okay, that's interesting. For last semester, I'm still actually when we still in the shock of conducting online learning, I'm also like I only have like 2 class remaining. So one class I use live session because during that particular time the students has not moved out yet from UTP. There's still large amount of them still in UTP. And then the second one is actually I pre-recorded my video using Loom Pro. So for those who like to record your videos, you may want to use Loom Pro, Loom, okay, Pro, because it is now free. And then instead of like another tool you can use is a Screencast-O-Matic, of course. But when I recorded that video, I'm going to show you later on how I use Telegram to connect with my students actively. Okay. Padlet, get students to do their draft writing or summarizing short paragraph. Anything else you want to share? What are other examples that you could use in order for you to engage with the students as part of the formative assessment? Socrative use for short questions, especially calculation. Okay. If I want to show you here, I just Google actually. I found that there is 11 best online whiteboards that we could use actually for collaboration purposes. So I think they have mentioned here, for example, like using Miro, Stormboard. Last night I tried InVision freehand, but only you need to students asked to sign up here. But then this is where actually you could collaborate, InVision freehand. And then if let's say you have other things, for example, explain everything whiteboard. Some of the things is actually only for single use, but some of the online whiteboards are actually meant for collaboration. Similarly, if let's say we be able to have a team, Microsoft Teams, that is actually would allow us to use um, Microsoft Microsoft whiteboard actually. Okay. Another collaborative platform that you could use is actually Koggle. Okay, Koggle, this is where actually you'll be able to create a mind map. So you can actually create diagram. Okay, and then when you have create diagram, so actually you can create mind map here. Okay, but at the same time you can also here, if you can see here, this is where actually you invite people to join this Koggle. So you can give the students tasks as a team. Okay, for example 4 or 5 of them as a team, they can actually summarize back whatever that they have learned from the online videos that you give them, so they can create their own mind map here. Okay, so for example, the example of the mind map here, for example, this is one of the mind map, so they'll be able to create these whole things of mind map together, and they could actually share the link or present to us, so we can see what are actually their work. So the platform is Koggle.it. Okay, right, let's switch back to our PowerPoint. So actually there are many tools that we could use, especially I think as I mentioned that instead of we are actually using online learning, I call this as emergency remote teaching. Why is it emergency? Because the students are scattered during this time, and some of the students have low bandwidth, low internet speeds, all those kind of things. So we need to consider all those kind of things as well. And some of the tools that is suitable, I feel that suitable for engagement, like Mentimeter, Padlet, and you can have these quizzes. For example, if let's say you use Edpuzzle, this can be incorporated in your videos. So that's whenever that the student watch the videos, in between that they need to answer certain kind of quiz. Only then they'll be able to proceed with the next part of the videos. We can also have Socrative, as you shared earlier. Poll everywhere is also another option for you to do the polling. But what I would love to say is that whatever that you have in Kahoot or poll everywhere or quizzes, most of it is in Mentimeter. So if let's say you use Mentimeter, there are many type of things that you could do inside Mentimeter. So that is, I would say this is a wonderful tool actually, Mentimeter itself. What I highlighted is Telegram. Okay, I'm going to share with you how I use actually Telegram for the discussion. But I would like to highlight here as well that whenever that we use this kind of active learning, online active learning, the three things still appear, which is first of all is about individual construction, where the students need to have their own time to think before they responded to us. That is one thing. Second one is actually where there is a construction and interaction with or assigned peers or peers. So this is where actually we need to think a bit creative. How do we actually allow the students to pair up to discuss on certain things before they should be able to share the class overall class interaction with instructor? Because the challenge right now is, if let's say we are doing this in our class, we still can see whether the students participate or not in our activities. But here in online session, we do not know which particular students. We know that some of the students who are interacting, for example, like they respond to the chat box and everything. But there are of course some kind of students who actually do not respond to us at all. So this is our challenge. So we need to think a bit creative. How do we make sure that everyone's here involved? Okay, so as I said that even though that when we create a room that could actually have 200 or 300 people in one go, still we need to think of a way that maybe that need to be shrink a little bit so that we can see, we can really monitor whether the students are actually participating or not in our session. Otherwise, like what I'm doing right now, I'm just thinking that I'm talking alone. due to the inability of the chat function, right? So it's not that easy lah in that sense, okay? But we have to make do. But one of the I would like to share with you, if when I actually use Telegram for the session, actually what Telegram is also one interesting, how do I say that, one interesting platform that actually you could use in order for you to engage with your students. Okay, so let me share with you the Telegram, right? So if let's say you can see here the Telegram, I have one group. This is where actually my previous semester students. I didn't intend to create this group in the first place, but because everybody is actually staying away from each other, so I created this particular group so that everybody could respond. One of the things that Telegram could do is actually we could actually create polls, or we actually can create quiz here. Let me share with you. So okay, for example, if let's say you use quiz board, you can create a quiz. Okay. So for example, like I have create quiz. Where is it? Okay. So here I have actually create quiz using quiz board in Telegram, and I ask the student to respond within certain period. Okay. So for example, like here, I ask the students the reference state for the calculation of energy balance in reactive system to be used if heat or formation method is used is what. So the students need to respond to this, and then there are also some other questions. And then here there is a finalized who actually can answer correctly all the 4 questions. And then I use my audio so that I could record back the response to the questions I have given earlier. Why I created this audio is that I know that some of the students, they may not have access to the Telegram during that particular time. Maybe because of their speed of internet, their poor connection, all those kind of thing. But they still can go back and listen to this explanation. All right. So even though I know that some of the students, because there are 176 members in this group, okay, I know that not all the time the students appear to be here, but at least they can use this platform as part of their revision. So I always use my audio, so I record back, because I think if in order for me to type, it's gonna taking quite some time. So I record my audio so that the students can listen to the explanation for each of their query or those kind of thing. Another thing that the Telegram could do is actually we use poll. Okay, Telegram, in Telegram also we can use poll. So you see that there's a lot of discussion here. So here again, also we can use this as part of the formative assessment. So for example, like I said, in order to maintain reaction temperature in the reactor for isothermal reaction, what kind of control elements we could use? So this is for the first year students. Some of the students may not get it. Some of the students got it right. And then I take my time actually to explain to the students. Also, I kind of having questions and answer session here, where actually I questions the students, and the students need to respond back to this instead of me giving all the answers. The most important part here is actually when actually we conduct this kind of online learning as well, we do not straight away give answers. We still need to trigger by using the right questioning methods. Okay, because if let's say the students ask us in the first place, they ask us something, we don't really need to give the answer straight away. We can give the question, why do you think that will be, that is the result that you think of? And then we could proceed with some other question, which actually could allow them to think on their own and answer it. Because instead of, if let's say we give them all the answers, especially here in this Telegram platform, I always ask my students not to ask me personally. I always ask them, if let's say you have anything to do with the subject, with something that you do not understand, ask in the group so that somebody else could understand. And whenever that I got that question, I always said that I'm going to respond it later. I wanted everybody, some of your friends responded to this group first, to this question first, only then I answer. Okay, so if let's say there's no one answer, still I said I'm not going to answer this until you try to answer. So this is some of the approaches that you may use if let's say you are using Telegram or WhatsApp groups. Okay. So we look back at the slides. Okay, so I have actually covered up to 4 things, okay, which is on the definition, on the scaffolding, or, on the guiding principles, as well as the books and model, revisit back. I'm going to talk a little bit on the alternative assessments, some brief ideas so that we know that what kind of assessment that we could give to our students for the next semester. Okay, so first of all, what do you understand about alternative assessment? Okay, so alternative assessment, it is also known as authentic assessment. Okay, it measures what the students can do and cannot do. It is beyond the traditional closed book written examinations, and it allows the students to receive feedback for improvement most of the time. Okay, by the end of the assignment or while doing the assignment. I think this is the thing that I like actually by doing this alternative assessment, because whenever that you give assessment, it's actually not to just measure for learning, but I use this assessment as learning, which means that throughout them doing the assessments, they're also learning something. They're also getting feedback on their own. Alternative assessment can easily be aligned to outcomes, and it may require more time and effort. So these are the things that a little bit difficult for us lah, because we need to think more creatively, but it require more time and effort. Okay, let me actually test you some things using the Mentimeter again. Okay, I have some learning outcome that I would like to share with you. Okay, so there are actually, I'm going to give you 3 learning outcomes. Can you please actually respond to this? If let's say you want to apply analytical and theoretical skills to model and solve mathematical problems, so this is one of the learning outcome. So what would be the alternative assessments that you think is suitable for this? Can you respond to this poll? Okay, 2 responded so far. So we want to make sure that the students to be able to apply analytical and theoretical skills to model and solve mathematical problems. So what kind of assessments that you think is suitable here? Okay. So I think many of you think here we should use case studies or role play. For example, that we create some case studies, some problems, so that the students be able to solve the problem. Okay, that is one option. Second option is actually we ask the students to do some kind of software simulation, and then we observe that how they actually solve the simulation problem using the analytical and theoretical skills that is being assigned to them. Okay, we could also give them as a part of the group project. Yes, this is true. I mean, for example, like we give them open-ended group project, and then we need them to apply the fundamentals inside here. We could also give online question and answers, right? I mean, like this is also for them to, for example, like if let's say they got the questions and then they try to solve it online. uh, that's one option that you could do. And then I think, yeah, of course, this is not that suitable for essay writing, but it could be done. We could think about the way how to do it. So I'm just trying to say to you that whenever that we want to give any kind of assessment, so we must try to look at what are the learning outcomes that we have spelled out, and then those other things can be translated into the assessment. All right, let's go to the next slide. To interpret, compare, and contrast ideas in the social sciences. I think our friends in management and humanities would like to uh, know how to do this. This is their field. So how do we actually, what would be the best for us to address these learning outcomes? To interpret, compare, and contrast ideas in the social science. What would be the best alternative assessment that we can use online? Okay, essay writing, case studies, role play. So we can see that many of you responded that, okay, we could use essay writing or reflective writing or role play in order for us to address this. This is what I love actually about Mentimeter, where actually you can use this to toggle. This is also what we call as poll, online polls. This is also, for example, like here, you can give a statements to your students and then ask your students to rate those particular statements. And then you can see whether the students are actually responding correctly or not, or majority have a problem to understand this. So this is also part of the formative assessments that we could use by using Mentimeter. So if you can say that compare and contrast ideas in the social science, we can use case studies or role play. We can also have essay writing. We could also have reflective writing as well as group project. Okay, let's have a look at the last. To demonstrate effective team working skills among peers. So what is best for us to do this online? How do we actually observe the students are actually demonstrate effective team working skills? How do we assess the students? Okay, so we can see that by giving group project is important, so that this is where actually we can measure whether the students demonstrate effective team working skill or not. Um, And you mentioned about case studies. So this is where actually you give a case study so that they can do collaboratively trying to solve the case studies. And other things you feel that may not be suitable. For example, like of course online questions and answers not so much. But if you could see actually some of the other tools, for example like reflective writing, this could be coupled with your group project in order for you to measure the team working skills. Okay, because the students can reflect as a team. So this is also you can measure that. But of course, reflective writing on its own cannot. But if let's say it's coupled together with group project or it's coupled together with the case studies or role play, that could be a strong tools that we could use in order for us to demonstrate effective team working skills among the students, among the peers. Okay, so let's go back. Sorry, let's go back to the slide. These are the things that I would like to share with you. That you can get this from the reference we can get from this particular center in Hong Kong. There is also like CITAL in one of the university in Hong Kong. They actually have list down the intended learning outcomes and what would be the suitable assessments that you can pick up together with this. For example, like if let's say you want the students to be able to think critically and making judgment of certain things, for example, developing arguments, reflecting, etc. You can use that as part of the article or literature review. You can have it as a case study, essay, practical experiment, project, report, and so on. And if let's say you want the students to be able to design, create, or perform, so this is where actually the students must have only a project or report, performing procedures and demonstrating techniques. This is where actually the students do practical experiment. I think one of our colleague at the chemical engineering department is now trying to devise some modules where actually the I call it backyard experiments or homemade experiment to replace the experiment that we should be able to do at the universities. Because some of the things that we teach in engineering, for example, are fundamentals, which can also be explained by our daily activities. What I'm also planning to teach my students, to ask my students to do next semester is a lot to do with cooking, because I think they stay at home, and I can explain a lot on the material and energy balance through cooking activities. So maybe those are some kind of activities that I'm planning to do with them by next semester. Okay. So again, these are the things: assessing and managing information. What are the type of assessment they could use? Managing and developing oneself. For example, on the working cooperatively, working as a team, as well as communicating. So this is where actually you can pick up what kind of assessment that you can give to the students. All right. So the most important part is actually whenever that you give any kind of online group project, please make sure that the students fulfill these particular learning principles. For example, like they need to be positive interdependence to each other, so such that the work too is not easily can be done by one person and be shared by others. It must have an individual accountability. Okay, each of the students have their own parts even though they stay apart. And then they need to have a face-to-face interaction. For example, they have their own WhatsApp group, or they have their own meeting, Zoom time, and then the appropriate interpersonal skills and so on. And I think we need to convince the students that actually collaborative work, even though online, is very important, especially in this particular IR 4.0 era, because many of people right now working collaboratively throughout, I mean, from different countries, different time zone, so they are working together as a team. So this is the time for us to make our students experience that, working online collaboratively as a team. So we need to think about suitable project or suitable case studies, suitable problems that we can give to the students so that they'll be able to solve this collaboratively. Again, remote teaching doesn't mean that the students need to learn individually on their own, but at the same time, this is the time for us to really show to the students that they can actually work together as a team, even though they stay apart. Right. So I'm not going to take for so long. But again, these are some of the final tip. Okay. For example, we need to think about the purpose of the assessment, what to assess, how to assess, who will do the assessment, and suitability of the assessment for the students. So these are the things that we need to think, bear in mind, not only on the assessments, but also on the instruction that we want to use. I'm not simply saying to say that, okay, everybody must go online as it is, but first of all, we need to do some kind of assessment first to our students. For example, to check into their background, where are they right now, what is their internet speed, can they afford to purchase the data, for example, and then how much data that is needed for them, for example, and then what would be the best combination of the teaching, whether it is totally asynchronous or it's a combination of asynchronous and synchronous activities. So these are the things that we need to assess to our students. And from here, this is where actually once we decide on what will be the teaching approach that we want to use, only then we decided what are the tools that we could use to help us to make sure that the teaching approach that we select works. Okay. For example, like if you, let's say we decide on the online learning, we must make sure that how to make sure that the online learning works. Okay. So these are the things that we need to think about. And then we also need to think about, again, this constructive alignment to make sure that whenever what kind of instruction that we give, it must be aligned with the assessments that we want to measure, and it must be aligned to our intended outcomes. So what do we want to achieve towards the end by our students? Okay. So by doing constructive alignments, okay, by making sure that our teaching and learning activities is aligned with our assessment methods, that will ensure that we got the desired learning outcomes. So these are the things that we want to make sure. Whatever approach, whatever method that we use, we want to make sure that finally our desired learning outcomes are achieved. Okay. And finally, actually, one of the things that I feel is recommended, highly recommended, is a reflection. I think we can actually ask the students to do reflection. This is where actually we'll be able to gauge their motivation of learning, their understanding, and their whether they are actually having certain kind of issues in the learning process. So I would recommend actually to use this Gibbs reflective cycle when actually you can have a template where the students need to fill up, write down their own reflection for the learning. Okay, so I do really recommend the students to write the reflection, so that is actually ongoing from their in. Okay, right. So let's switch on to again to the Mentimeter. I would like to ask you a question. Which online tool you would like to give a try for your online active learning session?
Dr. Tazli,
Yep.
do you recommend the reflection after each lecture, or what is the suitable time?
I always did. I don't know. I don't want to read a lot of the time. You know, I mean, so I asked them to do weekly. So that would be suitable, maybe, or maybe you can use twice. I mean, like one in a fortnight, once in 2 weeks time, so that they could recall back whatever that they have learned throughout the session. Because when we want to use asynchronous approach, it's not only they do not only reflect on whatever that they learn online, live, but they also recap whatever they have gone throughout the whole week.
Maybe at the end of each chapter.
Yeah, you can read that way. Yeah.
Okay.
For example, per chapter basis.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Dr. Tazli,
Yes.
just now you mentioned about Google. You mean in Google you can separate them into groups and they work together on the site and we can see each group? Is that what you meant?
I mean, for Google, what we can ask the students to do is actually when we assign them groups, they can create their own Google, and what they can do is actually just add us as collaborator, or they just give link to us so that we can view their works.
And what kind of work can they do on Google?
I mean, for Google, mostly it's just mind map actually.
Oh, mind map.
Mind map.
Alright.
Tapi kalau macam in Vision just now, you can use whiteboard, where actually it's a collaborative whiteboard. So everybody can...
Apa tadi?
In Vision, if I'm not mistaken. Here, in Vision freehand. Can you see it?
Okay. Alright.
I have not tried this, but I've seen it yesterday, so it could do collaborative work here. Another way is actually you can use Microsoft OneNote. Microsoft OneNote is also a collaborative platform. So here, many of you would like to try for Mentimeter. I think I have already forgo Kahoot. Since I came across Mentimeter, I think I have already, even I forgot my Kahoot password. So we can have Socrative. Yeah, I think Socrative is also good. I know the challenge for you to do the Padlet is actually because of the limited numbers. But one of the things that you could do in order for you to have a new Padlet Padlet sheets is actually to archive. Okay. Fortunately, I'm an avid user of Padlet. I've been using Padlet for quite a long time ago, so I think I have actually a lot of here. I'm not a pro member, but actually I am be able to have a lot of Padlet accounts. I mean Padlet sheets before here before. But one of the things that I realized, what you can do in order for you to use Padlet multiple times is actually you need to archive your Padlet. Okay. So for example, like if let's say you archive one Padlet, you can create a new Padlet. You may want to try that. Okay. So I keep doing that. For example, like my Padlet, which is already like 5 to 4 years ago, I've already archived it. So it is here. And then I can keep making a new Padlet so that I can have it with my students. Telegram, Microsoft Forms, quizzes, Quizlet. Okay, all right. I'm going to allow open for, I think, Q&A session. If let's say you do not want to ask me through Microsoft Teams, you can actually ask me here, so I can respond to you.
Dazli,
So
I have one
type
question.
yes.
Is it possible to
Yep.
create a group within team, like a smaller group within team that we can monitor during the online session?
I think we can actually. But last time when I don't know. I mean, used 2 years ago. I used to create teams, small units, groups for the students. Have not. I think I forgot that, but I think we can do that. I could recall that one of my courses to reaction engineering, we have a lot of teams there, but I have not revisited back how to actually create those teams. So they can have file on their own. The challenge is that other group may also access that teams.
Okay.
That's a little bit challenge lah. I mean, it's not locked only to yourself.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
No problem. Can we conduct PBL teaching online? If let's say you have been conducting PBL face-to-face before and you are confident on doing that, sure, you can proceed with it. But the challenge of conducting PBL teaching online is that the students may not gel up well. I think that's one of the challenge that I could say lah. The students, because in order for you to give a PBL, the students punya team formation tu must be strong. So far I have not come across a way of making a online team building with them. So that is a little bit challenge. But if let's say the students have been, if let's say you have a cooperative based group before, for example, like previous semester, the students in the same group, you want to continue with the online PBL teaching this semester, I think that is okay. But I feel it may not be suitable that much. So maybe we want to try just a simple project-based learning, not problem-based learning as a team. What about the use of MS Teams? I would recommend actually to use Microsoft Teams because a lot of things can be done here. You can use files to collaborate. As I said, you have whiteboards. You can also have lots of apps embedded together inside Microsoft Teams. So I mean, this is one of the good option for you to use for the live session. Okay. Telegram, which one to use? Telegram web or Telegram Messenger or Telegram app? I think doesn't make any difference. Actually, I have one Telegram. The thing is, I have a Telegram in my phone as an apps. But at the same time, I also have Telegram web on my computer. So when I have live session with my students, I use the computer. So it's easy for me. I can see clearly. Any comment on usage of Webex? I have tried Webex once before when I need to present to UNISA. I make my training session to UNISA. I think like others is also similar, except that if let's say the university subscribe to it, then it's good to go. But I think we UTP subscribe to Microsoft, so as for now, I would recommend to use Microsoft Teams lah. Only if let's say you want to have outsiders, I think Teams a little bit difficult, but they still can have invite guests to come in. I have not figured out how to use Teams, but if let's say you need to have a adjunct lecture session, you want to have somebody from industry to give talk to your students, I think it's okay to use Webex or Zoom, something like that. Is there any subscribe tools from CETAL for lecturer to prepare interactive presentation? I need Reza to answer this or the team from CETAL, as I'm no longer with CETAL. Reza, are you here, Reza? Irwan, can you answer?
Yes. I'm not sure whether there are any prescribed tools. No, I would say no lah at this moment, because at this moment we are actually trying to provide because actually ITMS is doing integration of ULearn with Teams.
Okay.
The two tools. So, but it hasn't. I mean, they are doing the integration, and it will probably. They say that it will end by the middle of next month. So, until that time, somebody is actually for. I think he's here now. Dr. Iskandar. I'm not sure whether. I mean, just now I saw his name, but he is trying to do the, to test whether, I mean, it is possible to do that. I mean, how effective it is. So
Okay.
that's my answer.
But maybe I don't know. Last time, if let's say for example, lecturer want to create animation, you can use like macam Powtoon. I mean like Go Animate. So those are some kind of software. Also, is a paid. You need to pay for it. But I don't know. Maybe you could recommend to Sital to subscribe it so that some of the lecturers can use the platform lah. I mean like this software. Okay. What we can answer to student if he or she says my network is bad, I cannot attend quizzes because it's difficult to make quiz again and again. Okay. this is why actually I myself I'm not really keen on giving quizzes you know during for short period of time. I don't like giving quizzes for the students because I know that some of the students may really have difficulties of assessing this. And then at the same times, you know that during this particular period, I know that morning class is not really something that the students look forward. They really wanted, but if let's say you conduct class at night, that is the time where actually they're very active, because they know that during that time the utilization of internet from other people's may be lesser. Okay, so if I were you, first of all, I may not conduct quizzes. I may give something similar to extended assignments that we have given last semester. So which gonna take few hours for them to answers that and respond and upload the information. So I can't really answer to this lah. But if I were you, I'm not going to conduct quizzes, but I may give some kind of like you need to solve this within one day kind of questions. Do we need to link the online tools to ULearn? This one I haven't done myself, but I think as part of the some of the I don't know. I mean, it's not part of the requirement yet by the university. If you could do that, that's good. But I don't think that is part of the requirement yet. But we could do that actually. There are so many tools around, very confusing. Would it be good to have one or two standardized tools for UTP teaching online purpose? I think it depends on which one that we feel that we are familiar with and which one that we like to use the most. I mean, and it depends on actually which particular outcomes that you want to achieve. So I cannot really say that we should have a standardized tools, but it is up to you to pick one or two tools that is more suitable for you. I think that is the best way to do it. For example, like for me, I'm sticking right now with Mentimeter and Padlet. And sometimes I may want to use Google just for collaboration. I think that is only enough for me. For my course lah. But maybe some of you need to do some kind of design or whatsoever, and I think you need to figure out which kind of tools that is suitable for you. Can we have an online tool which is approved by university and the training is conducted on it for an effective utilization? I think I need to give this to Sital. Sital need to take this into account and think about it. I know again there are so many tools outside there, but as for now, before the university standardize everything, just pick one or two that you feel suitable for you and you are familiar with it the most. I believe if you do really a good job of accommodating every student, everyone probably able to pass the course with a very good mark. What is your opinion if we have 90% of the student get A? Possible? I think it depends actually. It depends on the outcome that actually we specify for the students. For example, like if let's say the outcomes is a quite low level of outcome, for example, the students to be able to understand something, to define something, to explain on something, I think it's possible for you to have this number of percentage to get an A. But if let's say we start to have, to enumerate or to actually not enumerate, to make some comparison studies, to analyze something, that is where actually I'm not really sure whether we could have up to 90% got an A. I mean, some of the students are considered good. They are really good. But some of the students, there may be a bit struggle in order for them to get that justification. For example, I mean, I take into my experience of marking my extended assignments. I can see that many of the students are good at calculations, but on the bigger portions of giving some kind of doing some kind of analysis, making some comparison, not many of them are able to do that. Even some of the good students I used to know, they only just be able to write certain thing on point forms, but not up to the par that is needed for them to get full mark. For example, like some need lengthy explanation, given 10 marks, they just give 2 or 3 points. So still it's not justified for them to get a good mark for that. So, well, it depends, again, it depends on the outcome. I would say that. So I think Mentimeter has limited access. Do we have an upgraded Mentimeter for UTP lecturer? I think again this one is I pass back to Sital. I think Reza may want to take into consideration of this, so that I mean, like, maybe we can have a license. I don't know. I'm not sure whether we can have a institution license for this. It's possible actually. How to avoid online cheating? Okay, so online cheating, I always, this is sometimes what I use is actually I go through Turnitin. I make sure that the students pass the work through Turnitin on the open book assessments that I give to them. That is one of the examples we could give. Other than that, we need to avoid closed book assessment, because in the online part, actually students can just go anywhere to get the answer. So we have to be creative. And I think this is also a challenge for us, the lecturers, actually to be creative. I think that is one of the challenge for us, to be creative enough to find open book assignment that is suitable for our students. Only then we'll be able to avoid any kind of cheating. Okay, this is already answered. I think, what online tool is suitable to scribble mathematical equation and solve it to show necessary working? I think the Wolfram mathematics, I'm not sure about this, but somebody has responded on the Wolfram Mathematica, for example. So I'm not sure whether that is suitable. I haven't, but as for now, for me is I use a very I would say conventional method. So the student need to scan it and upload it back, so I can see the working flow. That's all I can see for my subject. Can you make a session about how to use Mentimeter? This one I can try. Lah. Tapi as for now, if let's say you use YouTube or Google, you may be able to find some actually. Actually, I like to use this. This is really where actually, even I use this session, asking question. I always use this part in my class. So towards the end, I always ask the students to write down questions, discuss with their friend first, and write down question. What are the things that you do not understand? So I try to respond, or I ask them what's the answer for this. In your opinion, how effective is online teaching as compared to traditional teaching? Traditional teaching is face-to-face. If let's say there is no interaction, if let's say there is no engagement between both, I would say that both are not effective at all. So again, as I said, if let's say you want to do online teaching, you must make sure that it is as interactive as possible. But taking into account that this is not really a real normal online teaching, this is a pandemic related, I would say, emergency remote teaching. So we cannot really compare the effectiveness of doing this remote teaching with the normal online teaching. Okay, of course we're gonna have some hiccups here, but I believe that if let's say we try to incorporate some kind of interaction with the students using certain kind of tools, that would help actually. Okay, this one I already answered. What online? Okay, this one I already answered. Okay, I think that's all. I've already answered all the questions. Thank you very much. I think we finish a bit earlier.
Dr.
Oh, any
Tasri,
more? Yes.
I asked one just now. What about the big blue button dekat Ulearn tu?
Oh, yang tu semalam Dr. Eric I think make the sharing.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'm also not sure about that. I haven't got through that, but I think I was told that it's quite useful tools similar to Microsoft Teams and WebEx and Zoom with certain kind of additional function. So it will be good. I don't know. Maybe it's good actually, but I haven't tried. Again, as some of you, I think some of us we feel comfortable using certain kind of tools. So when suddenly you want to change to a new tool, it's not that easy juga kan. So that is I think the challenge lah for ourselves. I would like actually I always emphasize on this. For example, if let's say you want the students to write a good reflection, it should start from us to write a good reflection. So if we do not know how to write a reflection, we cannot actually ask the students to write reflection. So we need to regularly learn how to reflect well. Okay. I don't know. At the same time, I also request feedback from you. So can you please actually go to this padlet.com /KRDUTP/UTP. Just share with me your thoughts on this session. The only turn off part for me is actually when I cannot read your ongoing question during the chat because there is no chat function. So that is my feedback lah. That could be improved for the next session for Sital, so that you know, you could respond this throughout while reading the chat. You can respond this during the session. So I think that's all. Reza, I'll pass back to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tazli. So that is the end of the session. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to attend this training session. If you want to review back the session, we have a recording of the session and it will be made available to you by 1 to 2 days. Okay, thank you very much. We will email it to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Tazli.
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much.